So I have this very, very polarizing belief. I think that it should be a requirement by law that everyone in their lifetime should have a job that's either in hospitality or retail, or both. If you have one in both, then you're automatically promoted in the workforce because that's a beast of a job. And I think it's akin to like the military. If you get your doctorate and then you go in the military, you're automatically in a rank. So I want to explain why. The things you learn, and I'm going to keep the military metaphor because I love the picture that we're painting here. So if you've ever had a job in retail, like working in a clothing store or stocking shelves at a grocery store, or you're a cashier or you work at a coffee shop, a bar, you are in the infantry of the human experience. And what I mean by that is you are a literal soldier dealing with people in ways that honestly no one should ever have to. You have to show up for people that don't care whether you live or die. And you're handling customer service to disgruntled, sometimes aggressive patrons, right? You have responsibilities that include things that you would never opt in to do, right? So whether that's cleaning bathrooms or scraping dirty plates, it's often thankless, sometimes dehumanizing, and despite being fully aware of all of these facts, you still have to show up with a smile on your face and a sincerity in your tone. And that's because you are representing the store. You are the ambassador of the brand or the entity, and your behavior is a reflection of the service they provide, which to their expectations should be top-notch despite you being paid probably not much higher than minimum wage in some cases. And this is work. This is an industry that doesn't get the respect that it deserves. And basically, tip your servers, treat your bartenders well. Don't be a jerk to the individual folding clothes at a clothing store. They probably don't really want to be there. And I have so much respect for anyone who has been in or is currently in one of these positions because it's hard work. Your feet hurt at the end of the day. It's not fun. It can be, but generally you wouldn't choose to be there, right? But the things that you learn here will take you so far. And that's not to minimize the hospitality or retail industry and assume it's not a legitimate career path, because it absolutely is. I don't appreciate how our Western culture looks at these industries and writes them off as like a stepping stone or like an in-between while you're figuring out what you want to do in life. It can be. But honestly, you could say the same thing if you work in an office or a hospital or on a farm growing tomatoes. Okay, so I know plenty of people who have left a 9-to-5 to become an entrepreneur. I know nurses and doctors who abandoned the healthcare industry because it was literally destroying their mental health to learn how to write computer code and make video games. And I know high school English teachers who decided to leave education, pursue their PhD, and open a yoga studio and be a yoga teacher. So there is no one path here. There is no right path. There is just your path. So I just want to make that really, really clear. Own your choices, live your truth. We have only one life that we know of. Okay, so in today's episode, I'm going to share some lessons that I've learned working in the hospitality industry. I have worked in a coffee shop as a barista and a server in a restaurant. And these lessons you could apply to not just a different career path, but I believe you can apply these lessons in life as well. And you know, one thing I'm interested to see is how these industries change with technology and just while it's continuing to increase. I know self-checkouts are a thing. I hate them, don't believe in them. I try to avoid them at all costs. And I feel like I've never used technology before in my life when I go up to a self-checkout, and I always need human help. Anyway, support that. But more and more technology is going to be replacing these jobs. And a few weeks ago, I was at a hot pot restaurant here in LA, and there were human servers, but there were also robot servers who would come and help deliver all the food, because hot pot, it's a lot of food, right? And I thought it was cute. Like if you were in their way and you didn't notice, they would like beep, beep, say, excuse me. And it's like, oh, I just had a very, empathetic interaction with a robot. So I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see how this episode ages. But until the rise of the machines and complete total world takeover, let's talk about the very important things that you can learn while working in this industry, or really just any type of service industry. Hey there, I'm Melody Bose, your host of Jeans with a Blazer, a podcast about rewriting the rules of work and life. All right, story time. So eventually I would love to read your stories, breaking the fourth wall here, but episodes are recorded of batches at a time. So we're going to record a few, but then eventually we're going to share some of yours. But if you want to send me your stories, hello@jeanswithablazer.com, or send me a DM on Instagram @jeanswithablazer. All right, so first up, my first job when I was 16 years old was a barista at a coffee shop. It was honestly the best job ever because the coffee shop also had Bluebell ice cream. So if you worked there, you could have all the coffee that you wanted and all the ice cream that you wanted. So yes, I was an extremely caffeinated teenager. If you cut me, I would bleed iced mocha lattes and chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. Facts. Another thing about it is, we had musicians that would come play on Fridays. It just felt like very cool, like one of those in the movie type jobs that you have. And my friends would come visit me. My boyfriend would come hang out with me. It was vibes. It was vibes all around. I mentioned in a previous episode that I grew up in a small town, Satellite Beach, Melbourne Beach, Florida, a tiny barrier island off Florida's east coast. It was very mom and pop, very small town, just not a lot of stuff goes on there. But I'm thinking back on this job, and this is something that would just only happen in just a small town. But I remember being 16 years old and having responsibility to open this coffee shop and close it too. But it would open at like 6 a.m. because it's a coffee shop. People get there early. So I would have to get there at 5:30 a.m., brew the coffee, prep all the stations, because people would be right at the door at 6:01 a.m. and they'd be super mad if you didn't open the door right away. So I'd be the only person working there for the first half of my shift. And someone would come join me in the second half around 9:30 to help with the morning rush. But it was absolutely insane to me that the owners of this coffee shop, they were a husband and wife, just super adorable, super sweet, that they would entrust a 16-year-old with the keys, the literal keys of their business. And like, what could possibly go wrong, right? But it was fine. I barely had my driver's license. I think for the first few months at work, I bicycled to work. Usually I share a story about a fail I had, and this isn't so much of a fail as much as a just WTF moment looking back. But okay, so a little bit of context. My mom, growing up, honestly, she was the best, and she genuinely trusted me as a teenager. She treated me like an adult. As long as I did well in school and just didn't get into trouble, she gave me a lot of freedom. And I'm the type of person that generally resists authority. So I wonder that if she had been strict, then how would I have rebelled? But I got really lucky with my mom, who she just kind of understood me in the sense that I didn't really have like that strict of a curfew. So I would be out all night, drinking with my friends, playing Guitar Hero. It was pretty innocent. But I'd have to roll up to the coffee shop at 5:30 in my clothes from the night before, change in the bathroom, and proceed to open the coffee shop. Still a little tipsy from the night before. If I tried to pull something like that today, there'd be no way. That would be impossible. I think I would literally implode. So, all right, let's move on to the lessons. First things first, remember details about people. So this has stuck with me my entire life since I learned it, and it applies, in scale to every job that you have. But when you go out of your way to remember the small details about people, they share their lives, their micro moments with you, it will help you in the long run. And because honestly, all people want is to be seen and heard and understood. And when you do that, you acknowledge their presence in your space, and it makes them feel really special. So my coffee shop had a ton of regulars. There'd be people who would come in 3 or 4 times a week to order coffee while I worked. And you start to become a part of these people's lives, even if they just associate you as the person who pours their coffee. a few times a week, that kind of familiarity just brings comfort to their day. And what I'd want to do is I'd want to build rapport with them so that they would look forward coming into the coffee shop. And, sometimes that means they might drop a $5 bill in the tip jar instead of $1. So there was incentive there, but it came from a very genuine, sincere place of just natural curiosity of wanting to get to know the people around me. You make a connection asking, how's your daughter? I know she just went to college for her first year. How is your dog? They just, got surgery. How are they doing? Are they okay? When you have that sincerity, and people can pick up on if you're being sincere, it casts kind of warm light on them that just makes them feel nice. Something that we crave, that connection, right? So if you can do that for someone, it will take you far. Number 2, set the vibe. So I viewed this coffee shop as if it were my own business, okay? So it wasn't just a place where you would go and get your double shot mocha latte extra hot. No, this was a kingdom of vibes. It was a domain that once you entered, I could orchestrate your entire experience there. And that happened from the moment that you walked in to the second that you left. And I look at it today as almost like consumer engagement, right? So it's something called surprise and delight, where you do something to go above and beyond for your customer that just makes them trust and like you or the brand better. And I could essentially control the music within reason. So I would link up my Spotify playlist and play a lot of, early 2000s and whatever indie obscure thing that I was in at the time. So every time someone walked through the door, I would show up with maximum energy, as opposed to this boring transactional stiff energy, which we've all been there. We've all had those interactions with someone who works on the other side of the counter. It is very clear they don't want to be there. I tried to make sure that I never did that because, you think like, how would I like to be treated? So just something that always stuck with me. Number 3, anticipate customer needs. The way that my coffee shop, I say it was my coffee shop because I truly felt ownership with it. But the way my coffee shop was laid out is the bar and where you got your coffee was all the way at the very end of the store. It had this really long hallway and these big glass windows where you could see directly out into the parking lot. So it would take you good 20, 25 steps to get from the door to the bar at the coffee shop. And beyond the front doors, you could see clearly, like if it was early in the morning, there were no cars in the parking lot and you saw someone pull up, it was probably to come in the coffee shop. I mentioned before that I had regulars that would come in all the time. So if I saw that one of my regulars was parking in the parking lot and they were coming into the coffee shop, I would remember their same order, right? Because they would order the same thing every single day for the 2 years that I worked there. So before they even got to the counter, I made sure I had their drink either almost done or ready for them. And just that conscientiousness, right? It's even cooler than, walking up to like a coffee shop bar and saying like, I'll have my usual. No, like I took that experience a step further and I had it ready for them by the time they got there. And it just made them feel nice. It made them feel welcome. And if that's not the most like small town mom and pop experience that you've ever heard of, I honestly don't know what is. But it was nice. It was nice to do. I couldn't imagine doing something like that in LA. But again, it kind of goes back to that surprise and delight factor where what little thing can you do to really go the extra mile for someone? And people were so appreciative of this tiny gesture and just having one less thing to worry about in that moment. Like you had no idea what kind of day or storm that they were going into or what they were coming like out of. So just to be able to elevate that experience for them just a little better was just as special for me as I'm hoping it was for them. So the lesson and the takeaway here is what as an individual or as a business can you do to have that extra sprinkle of delight for your customer or your audience? Number 4, we have 5 total. All right, so my next stint was in hospitality working at a restaurant. But before we go into that, jargon jar. Okay, I am sharing one of my favorites that I love to hate, and this is leverage. Okay, leverage, it reminds me of that one episode of Friends where Ross and I think it's Joey they're moving a couch from, to their apartment, and Ross keeps screaming like, pivot, pivot, pivot. That's what leverage sounds like to me. Every time I hear leverage, I think of Ross Geller. But people say it to, maximize their impact or the use of something strategically, and it feels so empty, and it just needs to stop. So yeah, there you go, jargon jar. All right, back to the restaurant. So that was a whole different ballgame than the coffee shop. It was this little French cafe, very delicious. Loved the crepes. They also had gelato, French onion soup, and fondue for a period of time. But it was the Hunger Games. It was the Hanger Games, and it was the Hungover Games. And I'm not talking about me showing up there hungover. No. Sometimes you would have diners come in on a Saturday morning knowing that they would need 3 drinks. They would need their ice water, they would need their coffee, and they would need their mimosa. This is what I like to call the trifecta, because I've been on that side and I've been in that seat needing to order these 3 things. You need to caffeinate, you need to hydrate, and you need to detox to retox, essentially. So lesson number 4 here. Everything is your fault, so you better deal with it. And if you don't, everyone suffers, including you. All right, so anyone who has worked in a restaurant knows this, but if you are a host or hostess or server, you work in what's called the front of house. If you are a chef, cook, dishwasher, you work in the back of house. So as a server, you are the ambassador of the food, right? So if the chef messed up an order, or the customer, they don't even like what they ordered, it's your fault. And now the customers are mad at you, not the chef, you. If you gave someone a glass of ice water with lipstick residue on it because the dishwasher may not have washed it correctly, or it just was an oversight that maybe you also missed, that's your fault. You should have checked the glass. And now they're disgusted and grossed out, and they're not going to tip you well. Maybe if it's been 30 minutes and they still don't have their eggs and pancakes because the chef walked out of the kitchen for the second time that week, and the kitchen is literally on fire. That sounds deeply personal. Guess whose fault it is? It's your fault. So if you've seen The Bear, 10/10 recommend, or even Waiting, also great. It is frighteningly accurate what goes on in the kitchen that the diners don't see, or they should never see. So the real lesson here is you have a lot of pressure on you, and you learn to adapt to scenarios really, really quick. And you could be losing your mind. You could be having a mental breakdown. When you walk out and you see those diners, you act so calm as if you just walked out of a spa. Nothing's wrong. Full of grace, full of poise. So the final thing that I will leave you with here is, honestly, there are so many lessons that I learned working in a restaurant. I'll end on this. Have a thick skin. In a restaurant, you're dealing with a lot of personalities. Chefs are stressed out about orders, owners, and managers. They are barking orders at you. Maybe even other servers that you work with are a total nightmare. I did happen to get lucky, and the people I worked with were honest to goodness great people. Again, small town vibes. Not everything is perfect, but just in that scenario, it was awesome. We looked out for each other, and that's what you should do with your colleagues. Maybe also mini lesson there. Oh, I threw in 6, not 5, but look out for your team members. Okay, so I consider myself a pretty sensitive individual, but in the restaurant, there is no room for emotions, none whatsoever. As long as the kitchen is open, you better back to center. Just like in life or any other profession, you will mess up. It will be your fault. Your coworkers will get mad at you, but you know what? You figure it out. You work through it. You show up and you take accountability. You figure out what's wrong, where you went wrong, where the other person might have gone wrong. You sort it out together and you move on, okay? Because you don't have you don't have time for anything else. It's moving fast. So the biggest takeaway here is just the interpersonal skills of owning your mistakes, and figuring out that solution so that you can move on. You can move on to the next scenario. So guys, the hospitality industry, I can't speak for retail. I have friends that were and are in retail. Can't speak for them, but the hospitality industry will break you. But you will emerge more resilient, more empathetic, and you will become a master of nonverbal communication, all of which are soft skills that happen to be in such high demand in today's workforce. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave a review, follow on social at Jeans with a Blazer. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys next time. Next time on Jeans with a Blazer. All right, if you are on the job hunt or you're trying to get back out there, you're trying to get back in that career, there is one tool that if you have and you have done it well, then it could very well get you that foot in the door to an interview and possibly land a job. And that is a resume. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through how to create a resume, as well as some considerations that you should consider, what not to include, and how to make it sound just like you, not this robotic AI-generated thing that is very common now. Now, resume writing is a skill, but luckily we do have that technology at our fingertips, and we can use that to our advantage. And there are some things that you should be cautious about. I'll go over those as well. That's a wrap on this episode of Jeans with a Blazer. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, a mindset shift, or just the push you needed, do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It helps more people find it, and it keeps these conversations going. And I love hearing from you. Follow at Jeans with a Blazer and tag me with your biggest takeaways, your latest wins, or just tell me what topics you want to hear about next. See you next time.